Hey, there we go. So for all of those online, we appreciate you attending online. All right. Well, good afternoon. My name is Adrian Martinez. Like Kristen said, I'm with the Design Division, and we're going to lower that. Nope. And we're going to lower that. That might help. Nope. I'm still getting feedback on the laptop. All right. Well, he works through that. I can definitely still continue. So I am with Design Division with the digital delivery section, and with that, I'm actually a caver as well. So not only do I work for TxDOT, I've been caving since 2003, and actually started with TxDOT in 2004. So I've actually been caving longer than I had been with TxDOT. So the story there is that I actually graduated from college. I graduated from tech. Before I started with TxDOT, there was about a 3 month gap, and I found an ad in a paper. Hard to believe, but there was actually ads in papers for jobs for a tour guide at the Caverns of Sonora. And so I took that position as a guide, and then I worked there for about 8 years. Then, of course, learning to cave with others, doing trips down to Mexico and New Mexico, and started caving all over. So after that, got into caving more on the rescue side. So I do actually am an instructor for the National Cave Rescue Commission. I also do participate in cave rescues for the Southwest region as well. So again, large background in caving. So TxDOT though got to merge my two worlds while I was in the Austin district, where I got to help produce the void mitigation plan sheets for our area. For if you don't know, Austin's very heavily karsted area, of course, from there all the way to the west. So what we're going to present to you today is our project for the Inner Space Cavern scanning, which came about because one of our folks in our hydraulics section actually got word that we had proposed plans for some future expansion on I-35 around the cave environment. And so when I got word of that through me, I was like, you know what, this is a really good opportunity for us to bring in some additional technology using LiDAR and other scanning technologies to actually go ahead and do a 3D mapping of the cave. So we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But before we get into that part of it, let me see. We'll jump back to the presentation. Let me see if this works. Can you jump back to the actual presentation? So by show of hands, how many folks in the audience have actually been in a cave, whether a wild cave or a show cave? Oh, wow. Holy moly. That's probably one of the biggest audiences I've actually had that many people raise their hand. That is amazing. Oh, thank you. All right. So on top of that, how many in the audience have actually been to Inner Space Caverns? All right. So that's very cool. So you guys have a lot of interest in it. Again, some idea of where it is located. And so with that, for those that didn't raise their hand and never been to Inner Space Caverns, it is located in Georgetown, which is just north of Austin. It's located at an intersection of I-35 and it's kind of the southwest bypass, southwest inner loop there in town, just south of actual Georgetown city limits. There's a nice little blow up. What you're seeing on the screen is an overlay of a PDF map that I was able to get from Inner Space, basically using 3-point rotation, got it kind of overlaid, kind of scaled it, but it's not very accurate, right? It's just me trying to figure out and kind of finagle it over the known points that I have. But the cave itself does lie in what we call the Balcones Fault Zone. That fault zone goes from Del Rio all the way to Dallas. And within that zone, there are hundreds and hundreds of these fault lines that reside in that area. Now, those fault lines is what actually helps create a lot of these karst features that we have from basically I-35 to the west. So as that faulting occurs, things move, the ground moves and shifts. That allows water to penetrate deep into the earth, start to carve out these cave environments. Just for a little bit more highlight, the yellow section, that's the Balcones Fault Zone there that you see. And then this is just another representation of all those fault zones. From what I can decipher from some of our fault zone maps that we've had here at TxDOT, the localized fault that helps create Inner Space Cavern is called 7 Mile Fault. Again, it's a very small localized fault within the area. So some of the history of it, this is why it's important to TxDOT, is because TxDOT actually helped find the cave originally. So from the surface, there was no really known entrances to this cave. It wasn't known at all. The property that we actually acquired at the time from the Laubach family did have other known cave features or karst features on it. So we knew that there was potential to hit something else when we started doing our core samples. So we assumed we were going to hit something. We just never realized how big that something was going to turn out until we actually started getting further into it. So there you can see some drill rigs. We started in the spring of 1963. There's one of the larger core samples where we actually were using to get in and out of the cave. And that's the picture of that same 24-inch core hole looking from inside the cave up towards the ceiling where that core came through. Now, I mentioned that we knew that we were potentially going to hit karst features in this area because of other known caves. Well, Jim Sampson here that's pictured was the highway geologist at the time. He was working for the Austin District. Again, he's the one that knew that we had a high potential for hitting the cave or caves in that area. Jim was a very big instrumental part of the exploration of the cave. But before he passed away in 2021, it was always described that was his biggest thrill in his life, was the discovery of Inner Space Caverns. So even after he retired, he started working for other agencies and other industries. He always would come back to Inner Space Caverns to do talks with students. He loved giving presentations there because it really was the true joy of his life. This is just some more pictures of him there. But this is him back in 1963. So that is him that's on the drill rig, stepping into the hole there. So that is Jim in his younger age. And if you look at what he's wearing, never ever would OSHA approve a person to go down a drill shaft, holding onto the drill rig itself on a pair of stirrups that were handmade. There's a pair of stirrups down there that he stood on and then was lowered 50 feet down through solid rock and then 20 feet into open air into the bottom of the cave. Now, again, I'm not sure about you, but that's not an approved hard hat. Those might be steel toes, but none of that screams OSHA approved apparel. So definitely not for TxDOT. But at the time, that's what he had, and we lowered him down into the cave. So after we created the smaller bores, we opened up the 24-inch hole. We then not only sent Jim down there, but we sent the area engineer down into the cave. After doing some minor exploration, they decided, okay, we need some more additional support. And so then they started asking cave groups to come in. So spelunkers, I put spelunkers on there, but for anyone that's in the caving community, if I hear the term spelunker, that's a kind of a red flag for me. Like, you probably don't know what you need. I'm going to watch you very heavily if I'm caving with you. There's cavers, there's cave rescuers, and then there's cave divers, which is a whole nother crazy world. But so we started exploring it with them, having cavers out here. They did help with the mapping of the cave, and that exploration then allowed us to help map it out so that we could eventually open it to the public and make it a show cave. So we opened to the public in the summer of 1966, which then we, of course, then did more exploration in the cave over time. And that's where we led to our significant finds outside of just the geology part of it. It's the actual paleontology part of it. So with that, I'm going to bring Dr. John Moretti up, and he's going to talk about the paleontology of the cave, which is just phenomenal.
Great. Okay, thank you, Adrian. So I'm John Moretti. I'm a research associate at the Texas Vertebrate Paleontology Collections at UT Austin. And I'm going to tell you more about the paleontology that was discovered in Inner Space Cavern after the cave itself was discovered. So the fossils that we're talking about today come from the Ice Age. So we have an Ice Age record of animals and environments preserved in Inner Space Cavern. And more formally, we can talk about the Ice Age as the Pleistocene epoch. The Pleistocene begins about 2.6 million years ago. It ends at about 12,000 years ago. And it's characterized by these huge glacial ice sheets that cover much of North America, Northern Europe, and Asia throughout that interval of time. those glaciers really define or are how we recognize the Pleistocene in terms of a geologic record. But also characteristic of the Pleistocene, of the Ice Age, are these big, extinct, charismatic, seemingly exotic animals like mammoths and saber-toothed cats and giant ground sloths. Now, I went too many. Now, these glaciers I have to be more careful with this button.
Yeah, there's a little bit of lag.
These glaciers that characterize the Ice Age are not static through time. And I'm missing a graphic here, so I'm going to skip to this one. But this illustration, it shows you that, right? These glaciers cycle in terms of their size and their geographic distribution throughout the Ice Age. The climate of Earth is not static throughout the Pleistocene, and these glaciers are responding to changes in global climate and shrinking to a minimum size there on the left during warm interglacial intervals, and they're growing to maximum size, illustrated by that image on the right, during colder glacial intervals of the Pleistocene. So the Pleistocene is the Ice Age, characterized by these glaciers in the northern hemisphere, but these glaciers are not static through time. Global climate and these glaciers are shifting, are oscillating throughout the 2.6 million years of the Ice Age. And we know a lot about the Ice Age from Central Texas. So here on the right is a map of the Edwards Plateau showing Pleistocene sites distributed throughout the region. You can see there's 21 sites total. That is a lot for any region of North America or Texas or really in the world. This is quite a dense accumulation of Pleistocene sites. 2 of those sites are in Austin proper, just off far west, and they date to the Middle Pleistocene. All of these other sites date to the late Pleistocene, close in time to when these animals like mammoths and saber-toothed cats go extinct. And all but one of these 21 sites are in caves, and you can see an example of one cave site there near San Antonio in the photo on the left with Grayson Mead kneeling in front of a saber-toothed cat skeleton. So a lot of Ice Age sites here in Central Texas, pretty much all of them in caves. And gosh darn, my graphic isn't there, but that's okay. We can improvise a little bit. These sites are distributed across the region, across the Edwards Plateau, but they're quite concentrated in time. So there's 19 late Pleistocene sites that I just showed you on that map. They're all clustered within the last about 8,000 years of the Ice Age. So they all fall between about 20,000 years ago and about 12,000 years ago. They all fall within the last cold interval of the Pleistocene. Remember, there's oscillating climate, oscillating size of glaciers throughout the Ice Age. And so really, we have a very robust record in this region, but it's all concentrated at the end of the Ice Age. And that's really exciting because that's when all of the big events are happening in natural history. Global climate starts to change rapidly. Us, humans, just like us, show up in North America for the first time. And these animals, these exotic megafauna, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, they all start going extinct. So it's an exciting time to have a great view of in the geologic record. But because our view is so limited, it makes it difficult to understand all these events that are happening. Why are these animals going extinct? What is the broader context? And a key part of knowledge that we lack is understanding how this oscillating climate throughout the Pleistocene, how did that affect these organisms? Understanding the relationship between climate change and the distribution and existence of these giant species would help us understand, would give us context for understanding what happens at the end of the Pleistocene and the extinction of these animals. But both here on the Edwards Plateau and really across North America, we lack that record. We don't have a good view of these earlier climatic transitions. And a good understanding of how those climatic transitions influenced regional animal life. So with that setup, that brings us to Inner Space Cavern itself. So here on the right, you can see Inner Space Cavern. Again, it was discovered in 1963. It was a closed cave system. And very quickly, as cavers started to map the cave, they found Ice Age fossils in the cave. But these fossils are really concentrated in a handful of locations through the cave. They're not just everywhere. And really, they're concentrated in locations that look like this. What we're looking at here is a talus cone or a debris cone. This is a giant cone of sediment that accumulated in the cave beneath a now closed sinkhole. So you're kind of looking at a slope of sediment headed up towards the ceiling. You can imagine an opening there at the ceiling, right? Bringing in daylight, allowing materials from the surface to enter in the cave and accumulate in these very large talus cones. This one is about 9 meters tall and 16 meters wide. These are large volumes of sediment that have accumulated in the cave. And we could think about it a little bit better with this diagram, this kind of cartoon diagram, showing you a cross-section of a debris cone like the one we were just looking at. Over time, this material can accumulate into the cave to the point that it actually closes off that sinkhole. Vegetation can grow over the top, right? And we get to 1963, where even though there were sinkhole entrances into this cave in the past, the ancient past, 1963, nobody knew there was a cave there, right? Because these entrances have kind of naturally filled up and sealed off. But it's not just sediment and rocks that are accumulating in these debris cones. Other materials, other kind of natural detritus from the surface is accumulating in these debris cones too. And some of those materials are fossil animal bones, the remains of animals that were living and dying on the surface when these sinkholes were still open into this cave system. And there were 4 of these sinkholes. You can see 4 debris cones there colored as those brightly colored shapes on the screen. Each of those is a separate debris cone representing a separate sinkhole-like entrance into the cave that was open during the Pleistocene. You can see they're separate and discrete from each other and really distributed throughout the cave system. Those orange dots are areas where paleontologists have sampled those locations for fossils. And I'll point out that there is a 5th Pleistocene site there labeled Bat Breakdown that is made up of material that's kind of accumulating between those 2 debris cones you see on the left-hand side of the map, the north end of the cave. So what type of fossil animals have been found in Inner Space Cavern? We're going to look at just some quick highlights here. So first of all, there is a really robust, really large and important sample of bones from an extinct armadillo. So there in the image on the left, we can see our native, our living 9-banded armadillo in front of this extinct sort of giant armadillo, formerly called the beautiful armadillo. These bones you can see are from Inner Space Cavern. They're from this beautiful armadillo. These things were about 4 feet long. So really kind of giant armadillos, certainly something we'd probably stop our car for, right, if one ran out on the road. But this sample of bones from these beautiful armadillos is one of the largest in North America and makes Inner Space Cavern important for understanding this species. There's also a relative of the armadillo, this giant glyptodont. There you can see actually the beautiful armadillo on the right for scale. These glyptodonts were about 4 feet tall at the top of the shell, about 10 feet long from the tip of their nose to the tip of the tail. These are really giant animals. And again, what was found in Inner Space Cavern are bones of the shell, pieces of bony armor from the shell of this animal. These animals are relatively common along the Gulf Coast, but this is one of the most western records of glyptodonts in North America, and it's the only record of a glyptodont from the Edwards Plateau of Central Texas. So all of those other sites that we have in the region don't show us this animal. So here, Inner Space is giving us a glimpse of past biodiversity that we can't see elsewhere in the region. We also have giant ground sloths. This is Jefferson's ground sloth, and there on the right is a tooth of this animal. Fairly large, but that's actually pretty small for a ground sloth. There is also animals that are more familiar to us, like the Brazilian free-tailed bat. All right, this is what's under Congress Bridge today. This is what is in Bracken Bat Cave today. These species are a keystone species in the Edwards Plateau in the present day. And fossils from Inner Space Cavern are giving us really unique and powerful new knowledge about the natural history of this species. When did they start having such an influence over regional ecosystems? Inner Space is helping us understand that question. Answer that question. We also have fossils of a spectacled bear. There are living spectacled bears in the Andes Mountains of South America, but during the Ice Age, there was an extinct Florida spectacled bear. These animals are not uncommon in Florida, but they're quite rare outside of Florida. And again, like the Glyptodon, this is the only occurrence of a spectacled bear on the Edwards Plateau. So again, Inner Space is showing us portions of regional history that we can't see elsewhere in the region. We also have saber-toothed cat fossils. Well, actually just one fossil, the one that tooth you see there on your right, and that's actually a baby tooth, came from a little cub, right? This is a deciduous tooth, a milk tooth lost by a saber-toothed cat cub. There are very large animals like mammoths. There's also, right, the smallest animals you can think of. Think of shrews, mice, frogs, lizards. It's really, these fossils in Inner Space Cavern really do depict an ancient animal community. And finally, we have this extinct pronghorn. We're not entirely sure what species we're looking at here, but it's probably something like the mural on the right, fairly large, something like the size of a white-tailed deer, and with these big 4 horns. On the left, you see a tooth from Inner Space Cavern. These animals are really quite rare throughout the fossil record, all across North America, yet we're finding them in Inner Space Cavern. And these fossils were found over the past 60 years during kind of intermittent investigations by paleontologists. First by Bob Slaughter in 1963, Bob Slaughter from Southern Methodist University, right, called down the same year that the cave was discovered. Slaughter actually crawled through the cave. He's crawling in that photo. That's a horizontal photo turned upright. And he estimated that the fossils in the cave were between 20 and 40,000 years old. So older than most of the rest of the regional record. Ernie Lindelius, my predecessor at the University of Texas at Austin, then started studying the cave and conducted excavations that you can still see on a tour through the cave today. And Ernie's work suggested that perhaps these 4 sinkholes were not all open at the same time. Ernie's hypothesis was that these debris cones may actually each represent different intervals of the Pleistocene, kind of different chapters in different locations, chapters of natural history spread out in different locations throughout the cave. That was a really intriguing hypothesis. And I tried to test both Ernie's and Bob Slaughter's hypotheses in some of my dissertation work that ended a couple years ago. So what do we know about the age of these fossils today, and how can we understand the significance, the broader significance of the fossil record in Inner Space Cavern? Well, again, my darn graphic didn't come up, but that's okay. It was just going to remind you that the rest of the regional record is really confined to 20,000 years ago to about 12,000 years ago, right? Again, we have this very limited view of the Ice Age in the region, despite a robust record, really concentrated at the end of the Pleistocene. But what our latest results show is that these three sites at the north end of the cave, near the end of your tour, if you go on a tour at Inner Space Cavern, that's debris cones 2 and 3 and Bat Breakdown. These three sites actually extend not only between 12,000 and 20,000 years ago, so they cover the same interval of time as all of the other regional sites. They actually extend all the way back to 46 and 47,000 years ago. So they double the amount of time covered by the other sites in the rest of the region, and they extend then beyond 29,000 years ago into a warm interval of the late Pleistocene, and are giving us our only regional glimpse of this earlier animal community, this earlier set of environment and climatic conditions in the region. And that is really interesting. Oh, interesting and exciting, because there is some new evidence that the animal community may be changing in concert with these global climatic changes that are bringing variations in temperature, moisture, and regional environments. So for example, that Glyptodon and the spectacled bear, they only occur in this warm interval prior to 29,000 years ago. Their fossils do not occur in earlier intervals of time throughout the cave, and that may be why we don't find them in the rest of the region. These animals, this extinct pronghorn tooth and this ground sloth tooth that I'm showing you there on the right, they're also extremely rare in the rest of the region. They only show up in one other site each. And these animals in Inner Space Cavern only occur in deposits that predate the peak of the cold period near the end of the last glacial interval at the Pleistocene. So all these animals only occur in deposits older than 20,000 years ago, and suggest that the animal community may be changing as the region becomes colder, enters this last glacial interval, and then finally even moves towards the modern animal community. And Inner Space Cavern doesn't just have this impressive record of fossil animals. There in the diagram in the center, where it says Musgrove et al. 2001, Inner Space Cavern also has a documented record of regional moisture patterns preserved in speleothems, right, in stalactites and stalagmites. That's what that graphic is showing you. They're one of these cave formations that's been studied by paleoclimatologists at the University of Texas. And that record goes all the way back to 71,000 years ago. So now that we've established kind of the baseline of the fossil record in Inner Space Cavern, we understand where animals are distributed through time. We understand the age of the fossils and associated deposits. We can test some of these hypotheses about the development of the modern animal community using a contemporaneous record of paleoclimate. And in doing so, right, we should, using this incredible then multi-component record from Inner Space Cavern, we should be able to explore natural history in a new way in this region and document, right, both the change, the extinction of this old animal community and the development of the animal community that we know today. And all, right, because people like you were out coring and preparing for highway development, discovered a cave and discovered an important component of regional past. So now we're going to go back to mapping the cave and talking for kind of the next round of highway construction and coring. I'm going to pass it off to Lewis.
Thank you, John. Great information, a lot of information. I'm also taking notes on how you were presenting, so I'm gonna follow it. um, let's see. Scanning the void. How many of you have been to the caves recently? So with that, you've probably seen some evidence of us being there, I should say. We actually, wait, I'm Louis Cogdell. I've been here for, been with TxDOT 7 years, design division 4 years. I gotta stop saying starting to get nervous, sorry. Let's see. Okay, stakeholders that we have in what we were doing, got the Austin District Design Division, right of way, Information Technology Division, and Environmental. We use LiDAR. We actually, our team took turns going down into the caverns. It was around January, February when we went down there. All right. Thank you. We went down in the caverns. We took turns. Some of the team went down, and then other team went down. And I'm bombing here. I'm bombing. All right, let me go back to this. Let's see, datum, a system of reference for specifying the spatial positions of points. This was a monument. It's on the top side of the caverns. On the outside of it, we traversed from this point all the way down into the caverns and all the way through each path. We put down a lot of PK nails. You see the little pink ribbons. Let me get to that other scene. The little PK nails have pink ribbons on them. So if you actually walk down there recently, you probably see a lot of pink nails. We were responsible for putting those down there. Basically, we gathered all those points, and that's how we set up the scanners on those points to collect the data. You can see all those magenta points. Those were all the points that we put down there. So we were down there for a long time. While we were down there, we saw a lot of tourists come through. And I think the funny part of it was as we were down there working, you saw the kids come by, and then they would, kind of be frazzled, seeing taller people and the whole get up. It was fun. Let's see, let me move on. These are some of my colleagues. That's Taya and Caleb, using some of the equipment as we traverse through the caverns. I do have a video here. And this actually shows, I don't know if you hear me, this actually shows did it stop playing? So this is a 3D scan of part of the cavern. So this is actually showing you a point cloud. Even though it looks like a picture, it's a point cloud. I think it's amazing some of the technology that we're starting to use and how it captures the data. I think that was part of the whole reason for us doing this, to try out this new technology. On this one, it shows different regions being classified. Move past. Sure.
So on the screen, you're seeing a video of the classification. So yep.
Sorry.
All right. So just to jump in a little bit, what you're seeing on the screen is a video of them classifying the areas of the scan. So for us, when we were trying to decide about where we're going to do our next set of cores for our future projects, we were really interested in knowing where the elevation of the ceiling was, right? We want to know how far is it going to be before we actually hit the cave again. But in realizing that not only do we need the top of the ceiling, we need to be able to classify the walls and the floor itself. Now, it doesn't seem very complicated in this process. You're just going through and colorizing it. It's actually not. It takes a lot of post-processing to identify what the actual separation is between the wall and the ceiling and the wall and the floor, and having to tell the program, hey, this is actually how to identify those objects when you're looking at the scan. So, again, this is just a very simplified version of that. But again, it takes a lot of processing and a lot of man hours in order to do what this little video is showing you to do. So again, we were primarily focused on the ceiling, but eventually we went through all the process for walls and the floor and the trail itself.
So we used terrestrial LiDAR scanners. We even used Spot, which you'll see in the back of the room. I think he'll do a little presentation of that as well.
Yep, it's playing now. All right, so yeah, you're just watching a video of Spot going through the cave. One of the things to point out with Spot is that most people think that having the LiDAR scanner on the back of Spot, that he's actually scanning while he's walking. That's a misconception. In fact, Spot carries the unit on his back, but he does have to stabilize, become stationary, stabilize, level out, which he can do automatically, and then the scanner will start. So it's not a mobile scanner on his back. So again, we would still have to have control, set up in the cave for him to point off of to have X, Y, and Z coordinates. But again, he's a mule at this point carrying the unit on his back. But again, what really helps with the process is that, one, he can get really low and in really small areas and then still stabilize, because traditionally you would have a scanner on a tripod, and the tripods are 3 to 4 feet tall. Well, when you're in a small cave space, the scanner has to have 2 to 3 feet of open air for it to be able to pick up the laser scan back into its receptacle. So by having Spot to be able to go much lower, we were able to get a much larger volume of points than having to try to set up a tripod in a 3-foot hole in the ground. So that's where Spot really came in handy.
So this shows the part of the cavern that I guess they want to show LiDAR over the exterior and the interior.
So this is this is kind of a heat map. So the red sections, the darker reds, are the highest elevation points of the cave. The lighter blues, those are the deeper sections of the cave. So using this as a heat map, you can see what's closest to the surface versus what's closest, or the lowest points of the cave. Now, what you're also seeing is 2 versions of the point cloud. So the one on the, make sure that the one on the left, the one that's moving, is a high density point cloud. So there's millions and millions of points to make that rendering. But when you're trying to use that for a design, or you're trying to use that for other design uses, that's way too much information. It bogs down your system. So then we have to go through and we thin out that point cloud so that's more usable for us on the design side. So that's what you see on the right-hand side, is that thinned out version of that. So you still get the heat map, you still get to see the elevation changes, but just without all the millions of points shown in one area.
We'll skip past this one. Excuse me, this shows a topography of some of the interior parts of the cave. This one here shows we use the terrestrial scanners to get some of the information. The information on the left-hand side is what we were able to get, say men walking around. We use Spot to get the other information on the right-hand side, which if you look in the red boxes, you can see the little bit of information that we were able to collect, a little bit more information. This one actually shows the paths through the caves. I can remember walking through all of this. Some of the areas were quite tight, and some of them, you know, you had the big cathedral ceilings. Um, if you haven't gone, I suggest you guys go out there, check it out. This one, to me, the image on the right, I like this image because it shows, you know, you see 35 going down through it, and you actually see where the cave lays out in relations to I-35. So I think that's quite impressive. And to know that I've been down there, mind-boggling.
Now, just to go off of what you're seeing there, so we only did scan the commercial and the hidden passages trail. So we never really fully went off trail. We'll talk about a SLAM unit here in a minute. It's a piece of technology you could use off trail. But for the most part, again, we stayed on the actual trail itself, just for the safety of the team and of course the use of the equipment. You know, Spot is run. What does Spot cost? Like 40? What's the cost? How much that? 200,000? 200,000, yeah. So yeah, we don't want to damage Spot going having him off trail too far. So, but yeah, so that's why you're only seeing these kind of loops, because again, we primarily stayed on trail.
I think I'm gonna skip past this one as well.
So this is just a rendering showing you again that the cave itself is not flat, that there's a lot of elevation change within the cave system itself. So again, you can just kind of see that the green line kind of squiggling through, that's the actual trail again versus the ceiling height.
This is a rendering of the point cloud of the entire cave.
And so you can see the detail there. You can see the actual stalactites and stalagmites through there. You can see the breakdown piles in the room. So again, we're able to get a lot of information off of the scans. So for those online, there was a question about the path being man-made. It is on the commercial trail. It is a man-made. Actually, I guess both are. So the commercial trail is concrete lined. What we call the hidden passage trail, it's a more natural ground, but it is still a man-made path through the cave. So. All right, so I'm going to talk about this part of the technology. So on top of using Spot and using the terrestrial LiDAR scanners, we also flew drones through the cave. We used drones with LiDAR scanners on it. We used it primarily in the larger rooms. We did try it in one smaller room. But with that, the drones themselves have sensors for collision, and they have a 3-foot radius buffer so that they don't accidentally collide into things. So when you're in a cave environment, that becomes very crucial because now you're close to things. The other things to consider with the drone flights was that we do have a bat population in our cave that's they're migratory, so they're not always there. So we did make sure that we did not have any eastern pipistrelles in the cave. They're really small little bats, so we didn't want them getting caught up in the blades and causing issues with them. So we did make sure that the rooms were clear for that purpose. We did not include those videos here, but if you want to see video of the drone flights, reach out to me. I'll give you my email contact here in a little bit. But the other piece of technology is what we call SLAM units, which stands for simultaneous location mapping scanning. These are handheld or wearable LiDAR scanners. So it makes it very mobile. And so once we had the control points set through the cave, these units can be set on the ground on that control. It knows exactly where it's at in the world, X, Y, and Z. You can pick that unit up. And if it's a wearable one, it looks like a backpack with shoulder straps, and it's got a unit on top, unit on your chest. And as you walk, it's shooting LiDAR scanners, but it's also inertially driven. So it knows exactly where you're turning. It knows where it's at in relationship to the world, but it also has cameras. So it's also taking pictures of the environment around you. So it's doing all three of those things simultaneously in its one unit. Now, NavViz is the company that came out and did this on their own as part of, just helping us out as part of a promotional package. And so they went through and scanned it with us. Yep, there you go. So this is actually a rendering from their actual 3D point cloud off of the SLAM scanner. So again, the SLAM scanner has the bigger unit has, I think, a 500-foot radius horizontally, 200-foot vertical. So again, this was all shot using the SLAM scanner through the cave. Now, the SLAM scanners are not well suited for the majority of what TxDOT does, which is outside work. SLAM scanners work really, really well for interior buildings, mines, and caves. So that's why this was a great environment to try this out. Again, all that you see, even the color rendering, that is all captured from the actual device itself. Again, what the beauty of it is that it's very quick. You can set the unit up, you can scan, you can walk, and take all the information you need. Now the post-processing, that's what takes actually the longest, but all right, like I said, and that's a YouTube video, so you can go out there and check out the rest of that NavViz video.
So this is myself, Taya, and Caleb, some of the team members that went down to help out. And that's it for me. I'll pass it on to Andrew.
Thank you. I'm Andy Blair. I'm a biologist with the TxDOT Austin District. I've been at TxDOT working as a biologist for almost 17 years. A lot of what I deal with in my job are endangered species. And we have in the Central Texas area, we have a number of insects and arachnids, little invertebrates that only live in caves, and they're adapted to, they're blind, they're adapted to live in caves, and several of those are rare enough that they've been listed as endangered species under the Endangered Species Act. When we're talking about all of the challenges with doing work around Inner Space Caverns, another one of those challenges is that two of those little karst bugs that are federally endangered also live in Inner Space Caverns. And so anytime we do anything where we're punching holes into the cave, we're doing anything that could affect water quality in the cave, we have to be thinking about how we can minimize those impacts for those species. As Adrian mentioned, there's also a small population of bats that live in the cave, and that particular bat species is proposed for federal listing. It hasn't happened yet, but it's another thing that we're thinking about as we get ready for future projects in this area is what else do we need to be doing to make sure that whatever we're doing is protected those bats as well. In addition to the species side, the cave itself is kind of a conduit down into the Edwards Aquifer. If you go deep enough into the cave, there's places where you can actually see pools of water, or during flooding events, the water will come up into the lower parts of the cave. And that is the Edwards Aquifer. That's, the drinking water source for a lot of folks here in Central Texas. And it has its own suite of endangered species, like some of these aquatic salamanders that live in the aquifer itself and in springs that come out of the aquifer. And so in addition to the cave species, we have to be thinking about those water quality impacts to the Edwards Aquifer as we're drilling, as we're doing any construction work that could introduce pollutants into the aquifer. One thing that I just want to kind of emphasize that as you see here, we're kind of a diverse group of professionals from a lot of different disciplines that are all kind of working together. And that's really, at TxDOT, that's a really important thing when we have a project that's in a sensitive area and there's a lot of complex issues. You have to be able to collaborate and work across disciplines with structural engineers, with geotech engineers, biologists, geologists. And in this case, we have this paleontology site that's just this remarkable treasure trove. And so having people that are from all these different disciplines being able to, kind of speak the same language and work across disciplines to solve a really complex problem is a really, really fun and cool thing to be a part of. And then I think with that, we've got contact information up here. If you guys need to reach out, one more. If you need to reach out for CEU credits, you can contact Kristen. Otherwise, I think we have a couple of minutes and maybe we can answer a few more questions or if there's questions online. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming today. And if you have any questions, you can raise your hand. Possibly online. You might be able to send a message via chat. If not, you can reach out to me later. I apologize, there were a couple slides missing from Dr. Moretti, but that was just during the Save As process. This is our first Lunch and Learn that went live, and thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? Are we all good?
The only question online was just someone asking if he could get contact information for all the speakers.
Oh, yes. If you send me an email, I will be happy to provide that.
Okay. We've
That's
got
Kristen
another
Miller.
question. What impact does flooding have on the cave?
So, all right, I guess I'll take this one. So the impact to the cave when it floods. So the cave does not flash flood. I want to point that out first. So even during really, really heavy rain events, the water does not rush in like you would see like on some of the Thai rescue things that you've seen on the news lately. The cave floods from the ground up. So basically the cave acts as a secondary reservoir for the Edwards aquifer. So as the Edwards fills up from below, the cave will start to slowly fill up and eventually the water recedes back down. So it's a very slow event. So what we see in modern times is we don't see much effect. What we see is sediment moving within the cave from when the cave kind of settles up. Some of the sediment gets disturbed and then it will resettle in different parts of the cave because we do have mud, we have clay in there. And so that resettles. Outside of that, it really doesn't affect the cave itself. The cave environment's pretty stable. So we don't see any movement in the structure itself. Now, it does, of course, displace also some of the invertebrates and some of the cave creatures that live in there. They may displace to higher elevations, but really that's the majority of it.
We've got another question. What is the time frame for construction on I-35?
That's a good question.
Yeah, to be determined. So again, there's a lot of proposals out there for different types of work to be done in that intersection. And so we're still going through a lot of the evaluation process. Andy can probably.
Yeah, I work in the Austin district, and so we're actively working on some design for a bridge project in that area. And there's potentially another future connecting project. They're all still pretty preliminary right now, so it's not anything that's going to go to construction in the next couple of years. We still have a lot of work to do on the design side. To even know where a good place to put bridge columns is, because if you think about trying to put bridge columns into this area where the geology is just, full of holes, there's not a lot of good places to put them without punching into that cave, which we don't want to do. So it's a little bit more involved design process than a typical TxDOT bridge project, for sure.
Okay, we have one question in the audience.
What were your temperatures down there as far as when you're working at the different levels?
Yeah, so the cave itself stays relatively consistent. It's around 72 degrees, but the cave humidity is relatively high because of all the water that's still dripping into the cave. There's still a lot of activity and still a lot of growth in there on the crystal side. And so that humidity level sits around 82 to 90%. And so the temperature relative heat index in there is around 78 degrees. Now, Lewis probably thinks it's a little higher than that when he was actually down there working and carrying equipment. But I will say that was actually something to contend with when we were carrying the equipment down there. So when you're bringing a piece of equipment, especially the LiDAR, things that have lenses that can condensate or cause condensation on the lenses, if you bring it straight in from the outside, because again, they were doing it during the wintertime. And so if you're bringing a cold piece of equipment into a warm, moist environment, you cause condensation. And so now you have moisture on your lenses that cause issues.
So we went in with coats, had to shed that coat once you got down in there. And then when you came back out, had to put that coat on real quick. So,
but the team also
80,
had to learn. Go ahead.
Yeah, 80, 90 degrees. I mean, it felt like summertime down there, even though it was wintertime.
And as far as the equipment goes, we started leaving the equipment in the cave so that it was always acclimated to that environment. So we wouldn't take it out every day. We would store it in the back parts of the cave outside of commercial viewership. That way we didn't have that issue over and over again.
We've got another online question. What is the biggest challenge with managing this volume of data set? From my understanding, LiDAR is a sequence of sometimes hundreds of images.
Buying lots of hard drives. That's the real answer.
Yeah, so processing it, it took several days to process the information in the data sets. Because yeah, you're talking, terabytes worth of data for even a cave environment like this, where you had, a 360 environment, a ceiling, a wall, and a floor. So yeah, it's a very large data set.
Yeah, I would just add that, there's this challenge of all of that data requires storage and just processing power when you're running computers. And so you're trying to sort of minimize what's the least amount of data that we can get by with to still be accurate and usable for what we need it to do. And so that's a real trade-off and a difficult thing. And so one of the things we did was we cut off just the ceiling portion of that LiDAR scan, and we've mostly been using that for our design work because that was kind of our most important thing. But we are also interested in the walls for sure. And so having to pull that separate data in and post-process it is a whole other effort that it's not something you think about when you just imagine like, oh, you just go do this quick scan and then it pops up on a computer. It's a lot more work than that and a lot more storage space that you need to do all of that.
Well,
So-
I can answer that question a little bit.
say-
We're about to wrap up on our WebEx, and we appreciate everybody online attending. If you get cut off at this point, we really are grateful for your attendance today. The question was, are there parts of the cave that have been not mapped or undiscovered? Is that correct? Yeah, and I would say we don't know what's out there. So the only way to really tell is when you drill sometimes. So you can do all of this work, but you still have to field verify it with core borings, and we can presume that there is more to it, and it may even be interconnected in other areas that haven't been discovered yet. So that's exciting. So is that?
Yeah, that's
Fair.
pretty much what I was gonna say, is that the assumption is there is more. When you look at the sinkhole maps that John was showing, there are sections of the sinkholes that we haven't been able to get around. We've tried sending folks through there, cavers, but those areas can be unstable, and we don't want them moving blocks of rock that are the keystone for those piles. So we've tried penetrating the far sides, and so we assume that there is more. You just can't get to it.
And one of the things that we'll do to get a better sense of that, as we're working on design, we're also going to be sending out geotech drill rigs to do some more core samples, and specifically in some of those areas where we don't have, this LiDAR, where people couldn't go, to get a better sense of the extent of the cave or other caves that may be sort of interconnected with this whole. It's really more of a cave system throughout this area that extends beyond Inner Space Caverns in both directions. So that'll be a big part of our design process is, poking some more holes, small core holes, and then analyzing that data and trying to incorporate that all into this larger model of what's going on in the geology here.
And of course, we also have the ground penetrating radar as an option as well. So.
Okay. Oh, do you have one more question? Yeah, I think we have time.
So I was wondering about the fossilized remains y'all found in the sinkholes. So what is the reason why there were certain species remains that why weren't those remains found in other areas other than the sinkholes? Like, what are the unique conditions that ensured those were intact in the sinkhole?
Oh, okay. I think I understand. That's a good question. So the fossils in the cave are restricted primarily to these past entrances. And that's because most organisms, most animals with a backbone, are unwilling to go into caves beyond areas with natural light, right? The things we do catch further away from the sinkholes, those past entrances, are limited pretty much exclusively to bats, right? They're going in there and they're roosting further away from the entrances, but they're using those entrances to come in and out of the cave every day. There's also, there's a jaguar skeleton that was not in the debris cone, that was kind of separate a little bit away from an entrance. And big cats are another type of animal that would use, or that at least in the present day, we know will use caves as shelters. And it's the same thing with this third animal as well. These The most common fossil animal in the cave is a giant peccary, something like a long-legged, much taller version of a javelina. And peccaries in the present day also use caves as shelters. And we find these peccaries, these extinct peccaries, in a lot of caves all across Eastern North America. And we often find them as whole skeletons. And that's the case in Inner Space Cavern too, especially around debris cone 1. These animals are really abundant. They're often present as nearly whole skeletons. And it seems like, again, these animals were probably using the cave as shelter, or were being dragged in by a jaguar that was using the cave as shelter, right? So most everything else is kind of living and dying on the surface, and their bones are becoming just another object out on the landscape, right? Think about walking across a pasture and finding a cow bone or something like that. There's just remains of dead animals laying around on the surface out there, whether we see them or not. And that's just another piece of material that could wash or be blown or carried or fall into these sinkhole entrances and accumulate in these debris cones. So we have a much better representation of the animal community in the debris cones. There's a little bit away from there, and it all seems kind of to be the result of just normal animal behavior.
Okay, well, thank you again, everyone, for coming today, and for your friends and family that attended. We appreciate you, and now you know what we do a little bit more, maybe. So thank you again, and thanks again to our presenters.